of Rome's great legacy is Christianity, but now Wales produces its own Christian leaders. They're determined to make the faith on these shores more rooted and much more outward-looking. Between the years 400 and 600, they managed to defend and strengthen Christianity in the teeth of Anglo-Saxon aggression. This is the Age of the Saints. Some focus completely on the spiritual life, away from the turmoil of war that's all around. It's a search for remoteness and isolation, for the kind of spiritual peace that can still be found along parts of the Welsh coastline. These are people who want to withdraw from the world and who take as their example the Christian hermits of the Middle East, thousands of miles away. We're on the edge of Europe here, but we are in the mainstream of Christianity. Other saints chose a different path, engaging with the lives of ordinary people around them. They build communities which shelter the faith in the troubled times of Anglo-Saxon attack. The most important is the settlement at Llanilltyd Fawr, Llantwit Major. As Dr. Huw Edwards explains to me, this is where a remarkable man called Illtyd turns his back on a soldier's life and builds what we believe to be Britain's first ever centre of learning.
We don't have a lot of written records from this period, but we do have the saints' lives and we do have stories about mythical figures. Now, these are always sort of done much after the historical period. You kind of have to be careful with them, but they do tell us what was important to the culture. And certainly with the Illtyd stories, you're getting this image of a powerful saint, a saint who taught other saints, a saint who carried forward this notion of the Christian message. Illtyd starts out as a warrior rather than a monk. He was raised as a Christian. He's not a pagan. He was raised as a Christian, but he decided he was going to be a warrior. And then he becomes converted to the monastic life.
The church of St. Illtyd dates from long after the original monastery, but it's built on the tradition that Illtyd sets up a powerhouse of learning, producing 1,000 graduates. Some sources claim that both St. David of Wales and St. Patrick of Ireland are pupils of Illtyd. The Celtic crosses at the church door date back almost as far as the age of the saints. One of them bears the name of Illtyd himself and several of his chief followers. They are men who cling to faith and learning in a time of war. Prayer and study are their weapons, but the violent times they live in mark them with a steely determination to fight for the faith.
The Welsh Saints are a quite different bunch. There are no martyrs. They're quite tetchy. They really blast their enemies. They're very strong figures. So you get these wonderful legends which tell you what it is about a Welsh saint that we ought to emulate.
Illtyd's focus is on the world outside. In church terms, Llantwit Major is what we call a class monastery. That's a flexible settlement linked to the local chieftains who are also determined to defend their patch.
It was a time when Wales was beginning to think of itself as different, but it wouldn't have been all of Wales in the sense that we now think of this. So when we think of the story of Wales, you're really dealing with a mosaic which is eventually going to come together. And Illtyd himself taught a number of very important Welsh saints, and they went out and they founded their own class monasteries.
The mosaic of Welsh life isn't yet complete, but the picture is filling out. in the 500s and 600s, Illtyd's disciples built small communities all over Wales. The physical evidence of their existence is long gone, but the religious enclosures, the timber churches, the small buildings, the cemeteries, all inside a protective wall, they've certainly left their mark in every part of Wales. If you want to find lasting traces of the early Welsh church, just look at a map, because the Old Welsh word for enclosure is llan, and there are hundreds of Welsh place names which combine the word llan with the name of a saint. We've already been to Llandudno, the llan of Saint Tidno. There's Llanbadarn, the llan of Saint Padarn. There's Llanelli, of course, the llan of Saint Elli. There are slightly more complex ones. Llan Trysant, the llan of 3 saints. Llan Pumsaint, the llan of 5 saints. And then, of course, there's the most exotic one of them all, the one that talks about Saint Mary and Saint Tysilio, and lots of other things too. And yes, I can say it. Llan Fair Pwll Gwyngyll go ger y chwyrn drobw Llan Tysilio go go goch. How's that? The Welsh Saints certainly leave their mark in every corner of Wales, and they do more. Surrounded by Saxon enemies who don't share their faith, they manage to break out to inspire others. Their impact is immense. Crossing the Celtic seas, they nurture the Christian life of Ireland and Scotland, Cornwall and Brittany. The traditions they establish give us masterpieces such as the illuminated manuscripts of faraway Lindisfarne. But not all of these spiritual giants are travellers. The best known figure of the age stays at home here in Wales, and he builds a wooden church in this sheltered, tranquil spot in the far west on the coastline. Today, it is the site of this magnificent stone-built cathedral, which exudes power and certainty. It is, of course, the Cathedral Church of Dewi Sant, our patron saint, Saint David. Every schoolchild in Wales knows about the miracles of Saint David, how the ground suddenly rises under his feet so that a crowd in Llandewi Brefi can hear him preach. Though I have to say, it's a mystery to me why you'd need to create a hill in Ceredigion of all places. And then we learn that this gentle soul, on his deathbed, urges people to be faithful to the little things. It's a comforting image. It's a reassuring image. Saint David emerges as a bit of a softie. Don't believe a word of it. David's nickname was Aquaticus, the waterman. People used to think this was because water was the only thing he'd drink. But experts now believe it's because he's given to testing his faith by standing for hours in ice-cold pools. We have very few facts about him, but the way we see Dewi is important, because his name, his tradition are part and parcel of a distinctive Welsh form of the Christian faith, one that tries to hold on to its independence for 500 years to come. And it's that tenacity, that determination, which earns Dewi his place as our patron saint and as a national figurehead. So people have learned to live and to thrive in this landscape. It's challenged them, and they've left their mark on it. They innovate, they trade, they deal in objects of fabulous worth and beauty.